We are live. So just give me 1 second. I just want to be sure because I have on my left side the LinkedIn. There you go. I think it's almost there. I just want to be sure that everybody that just joined it's able to see us. There, there you go. We're good. Awesome. All right, perfect. So welcome everybody again to this great tech talks that we're organizing. As you know, we just opened a little bit over than 2 months ago the Mexican chapter of CLOC. So
Yay.
this is I am very excited about this. And well, Mary, I know you don't need any introduction. A lot of the people here in Mexico, you have a lot of fans here in Mexico. I'm a big fan. I think I didn't tell you about this, but I've been following you since long time ago, since you were the president of CLOC. I read every of your posts. You're super active everywhere, so I really appreciate that you took this time to talk about your experience, and of course the main reason for this type of talks is to talk about why people need to get involved into CLOC, because it's an amazing it's an amazing global association. And well, for the people that still haven't had the pleasure to know you, like, can you just give us a very brief introduction about yourself?
Absolutely. So I think in my core, I sort of describe myself as an advocate for legal ops. As a profession right now, I'm at a company called Ironclad, which is a contracts lifecycle management company, or a CLM for short. And it's been a great journey there. I'm on the executive team. My title is Chief Community Officer. Before I joined Ironclad, though, I spent most of my career at Google. So I was there for 13 years as the first legal ops hire, and kind of building and leading that function since 2008, which, if you all recall, was sort of the end of the world. It was the Great Recession, and everyone was tightening their belts. By the time I left Google, my legal ops team was over 60 people, servicing a department of like 1,500. So huge hyper growth during that time. And we really kind of built the function up from scratch, starting with financial management, moving into technology, and then business intelligence and systems and tools, and process improvement, practice and strategy development as well. And then on the side, during my time at Google, I helped to build and lead the CLOC organization, which hopefully you're all familiar with, but it's the Corporate Legal Operations Consortium, and it is the largest and fastest growing community for legal ops professionals and those who are passionate about transformation in the legal industry. That's been around for a while. So really excited to be here today. Was super excited to hear that the Mexican chapter or regional group of CLOC has finally emerged and evolved, and we've seen the explosion of legal operations around the globe. And I think the opening up of CLOC regional groups, you can almost map it as it sort of signifies where the growth, or like where it's happening around the world. And of course, places like the UK and Australia were very early on, Canada, of course, to come online. And then, of course, we saw other parts of the world follow suit. And so welcome to all the folks who are in Mexico, and couldn't be more thrilled that this is starting to gain traction there, and that people are starting to think about the legal ops role as a real career profession.
Right. And I think, I mean, there's a lot of things that we can talk about legal ops. I mean, we're not going to, I mean, we can talk a little bit about legal ops, but I want to talk about CLOC, because let me give you something about like my opinion and perspective. I know about CLOC since maybe 2 years ago.
Mhm.
And I was impressed because I was just like getting inside the resources, the community. And then last May, it was the first time that I went to the summit in Vegas. It was a pity that we weren't able to see each other. I mean, it's huge.
It's
I mean,
huge.
there's like so many events, and well, it's Vegas. There's no better place to bring people all around the world. And one of the things that I love about it is not just the resources and all the cool information that is published there, but the community.
Yeah.
You know, the community, because if you, I don't know, the conference are amazing, you can learn a lot, but then when you go to the, you know, after parties, the cocktails, and then so you're just having a beer, and then you have the general counsel from a big corporation just next to you. And I mean, you can talk about football or whatever, and then you can start talking about legal tech. What have you been working on? You know, and start to meet so many people here. And I'm very interested because you were one of the founders of CLOC, Mary, and a key figure in CLOC. So the first thing that I would like to ask you is, like, can you share with us like how your like CLOC membership or this time that you've been involved with CLOC has contributed with your professional growth in the legal ops world, and especially taking in consideration that you built a team in a huge company like Google from scratch, right? So I'm very interested, like, how that happened.
I don't think I could have done it without CLOC and without the community that was around me to help me. Even now, so that was, I started again in 2008, and it's been a long time since then. And the CLOC has helped to define the role. And of course, we've seen the explosion of this role emerge in companies of all sizes and industries and all around the world, right? Even in companies with like just a GC, they immediately hire legal ops. And it's much more defined now, but back then we didn't have a definition of the role. I would say even now it's still very new. It's been around for some time, but it's still new. And if you're the first person being hired into this role in your company, in your legal department, you're figuring things out for the first time. You're looking under rocks, you're finding problems, and you're thinking, I didn't go to school, on legal operations. I didn't get training on it. And so the only way to do the job is to just do it and figure it out, or to rely on others who've gone ahead of you and say, what did you learn from this? Do you have perspective on what works well, what didn't work well? What have you tried? What technology are you using? How did your lawyers feel about that? Because you can take the time to do it yourself and trial and error and stumble along, but you're going to waste a lot of good time and energy. So if you can find the people around you who, and I'm grateful for the CLOC community for being so open and sharing, you can ask people. And, I have this saying, never start with a blank page, because I guarantee whatever problem you're solving, you're not the first person, in a legal department to confront that challenge. And so why spin your wheels? Why recreate the wheel? Let's ask others who've gone ahead. And the beautiful thing about CLOC that I think is really unique, and since it was one of the first communities, now there's many communities in legal ops, just FYI, but CLOC continues to be the largest. When we were getting together in the early days, before CLOC was a real formal organization, there were a few of us in Silicon Valley. We all had the same jobs, and we kind of got together and said, what do you do and how are you doing this? And we learned how useful that was to just be in a room where we thought, oh my gosh, you understand what I'm talking about. Like someone else understands the pains, the challenges we're dealing with. That was just a sense of belonging to find your people, but B, just to have the comfort in being able to share and problem solve with others was very helpful. We created a very great culture in the early days, even when it was like 5-10 people, of sharing and transparency. And, we had some of the biggest companies that we were competitors with in the same room. But when we were with each other, we were thinking legal ops is not a competitive, you and I are companies that maybe compete in the same space, but we're not going to be competitors when it comes to how do we run our legal organizations. And so we got past the idea that you had to hold everything close to your chest. It was all about, here, I'll tell you what I'm doing. Here's where I failed, or here's where things have been really good. You should use this too, or here's my template. And since we started doing that in the early days, as we grew, that kind of culture of sharing continued. And I still think that's what we have today. And, hear it all the time when people say they go to the Vegas conference for the first time, or they go to their first CLOC meeting, or they join the forums, that they think, wow, people are so generous with their time, with their advice, with even their sharing their work product. So yeah, it's helped me a ton. I don't think anyone should have to go it alone.
Exactly. It's like you can learn a lot from the people that have just experience. I mean, you don't have to fail over and over, because I mean that's part of innovation, right? Because you have an idea, you still don't know if it's going to work, but if you can talk to people, and that's one of the cool things, right? It's like on the outside your competitors, because it's competing company, but at the same time you're helping each other, because I mean, if you want to ask about some specific type of technology, if you want to talk about like how have you handled your communication and processes with procurement, with
Exactly.
your compliance part. And one of the things that I've seen, especially in Latin America, and that's like what right now my main focus is, that they think the first and only thing that people thinks about when they talk about legal ops is just technology.
Mhm.
And when you get involved into CLOC, it's just one part.
Right.
It's just like you gotta know all the 12 core principles. Actually, let me show you this. I have them just in front of me all the time.
Nice.
And this
There
is,
it is.
there you go. You can just go to clock.org and you can download this. But you have, it's not just technology, it's financial management, it's
Yes.
vendor management, cross-functional alignment, technology and support, of course, it's a very important part, and data analytics, knowledge management, information governance. I mean, there's a lot of things. It's like, it's not how to use technology, but also how you can mix people, processes, and softwares
Yes.
and
Yes.
technology, right? So that's one of the things that have been helping me a lot with my, well, also with my CLM career and consulting. And this takes me to another question, Mary. And like, you already told us like how this helped you with how that community helped you on the early days. But can you give us any other specific examples on how CLOC has enabled its members to stay ahead of the latest trends and innovations in the field of legal operations?
Yeah, I mean, even today, CLOC for me is the best way to stay on top of kind of what's happening in the field. There's a very active, so what CLOC is, there's different aspects of CLOC as a member, and if you are an in-house legal team member, you have access to what are the forums, which is a online dialogue or a community where people are talking to each other through the forums and asking each other questions, and there you will find people raising, the issues that they're challenged with, and it helps you certainly understand what are the trends, what are people talking about, what are the challenges they're facing. And the example I'll give is that in the many years that I've been involved in legal operations and CLOC, there has been a huge transformation in the role, in the profile of the roles that people are getting hired into. When I started, it was really all about financial management, budgeting, outside counsel management. That was kind of the biggest pillar of legal operations and the place that most people started, because it's certainly impactful and very important to a lot of organizations. Well, fast forward to today, because CLOC emerged, there was more demand for doing things better within an organization, and that led to a desire for technology and the investment in technology that's taken place over the last 10 years or so, which has led to the emergence of new and great practical tools for legal departments. So digital transformation, which is a term that we're hearing not just in legal, but globally across organizations at the highest levels, is now trickling down to legal departments. And so when you say, yes, that's everyone's talking about technology, that is because I see a lot of the catalyst now for why I need to hire legal operations, why I need to stand up this function in my organization. Likely why it is becoming much more prominent in Mexico is because there is so much pressure to digitally transform the organization, and legal is no longer not part of that equation. So legal is now at the table and they're being asked, well, what about your team? What are you guys doing to digitally transform? So technology has become a real driver of change, innovation, which of course, as you mentioned, involves people change and process change along with it. But I think technology has at least brought it to the conversation and to everyone's awareness that there are better ways to do things. AI is another one, right? CLOC. If you went to the CLOC Vegas conference. Every year you kind of walk around and you see the trends of the exhibit floor. What are all the vendors talking about? What are the themes? And certainly this year, AI was, no surprise to anyone, the big topic of the day. And as you walk around the showroom floor, there are companies talking about how they're doing AI. You have a lot of internal teams asking how they should be leveraging it. So, just being involved in this community helps you have a finger on the pulse of what's going on around the globe. Yeah, I think that's what I would say about that.
Right. And I think, that was one of the main topics that were discussed during the conference and on the last summit at Vegas. And this is something that I can't just recommend enough. But for the people, I know this last time was my first time, but you got to go there. It's so cool. It's like you meet so many good people. And we have Prashant Dubey here on this talk. Amazing, Prashant. Yeah, absolutely. It's like I can agree with you more. It's like that community is so welcoming, and you can ask them so many questions. And as you say, it's like if you're in the competition, it's like it doesn't matter. You want to help each other in order to become more efficient, because a lot of the times the legal department has been viewed as a cost center to any enterprise, and especially after COVID, they've been cutting the budgets even more and more, and then trying to do a lot more with less. And technology, it's a big part. And one of the questions, actually, this was something that was the main topic that we discussed in our 2 weeks ago. We had another webinar with Yesenia Santiago,
yeah, sure.
and with Jesse, and was like, how can you build how can you create a business plan, right? If you're, let's say, if you're the general counsel, right? Maybe that's the first, let's say, champion or owner for leading legal ops project. But what would you say is the best way to convince the CFO to give you the budget to implement a legal ops team?
Yeah, this comes up all the time. And I think there's a lot of ways that you can approach this conversation. If you've already gotten buy-in from your GC that this is an important role, now you're talking to the CFO. And I think this is actually true for anyone in the C-suite or the leadership of the company. I always say there's 6 things that I think when you're talking about the return on investment or making a business case for legal ops or a CLM or any of the projects that legal ops is going to work on, I sort of define there's 6 ways to measure your impact. So those are, quite simply, number 1, dollars of revenue accelerated. So are you getting deals done faster? Are you accelerating deals? Number 2, costs reduced, cost reduction. Number 3, costs eliminated. Number 4, hours saved. Number 5, quality of work improvement. And number 6, quality of life improvement. So those are 6 things that I think as we in legal ops think about any of the projects we're going to work on, any of the initiatives, any of the technologies we're going to put in place, any of the outsourcing that we're going to do. If those 6 goals are important to you as a business leader, and I think the answer to that is, of course they are. They are the most important things. Then why wait? Why would you not want to have someone in this role that's completely focused 100% of the time on optimizing those 6 things? People say, well, it's not broken, it's okay. I actually heard that just today. It's not an urgent thing for us. It'd be a nice to have. Well, is accelerating revenue nice to have? Is, quality of life for your employees nice to have? Retention of your employees nice to have? I don't think so. To me, those are all top line, most urgent things for a company. And so legal should be no different. Every other function has an operational arm. It's very common. You hear about sales ops, marketing ops, devs ops, finance ops. Why wouldn't you want to run legal just like every other part of your organization? You don't want legal to be the bottleneck. You want them to be a part of accelerating the business.
Right. And that's something that, if you see the legal education, not just in Mexico or in the US, it's still very traditional. I've seen a couple of universities or law schools that have been teaching, AI classes, but I haven't seen anything related just to legal ops, right? It's still, the commercial code, and you got to do this, and litigation and securities and everything. But that's more like the substance. But when you think about like the processes, how a company works, it makes way more sense, right? And from those 6 points, except for 2, those are numbers, right? I mean, quality of life and quality of work. That's something that, I mean, it's a different way on how you can qualify those. But the rest are numbers. Are you taking less time for closing a deal? Are you taking less time for procurement to get a new vendor? RFPs are getting faster. You name it. There's so many. Like procurement. Like how many times have you passed the budget with this supplier because you didn't have any control on the payments, right?
Exactly.
I mean, those are like the things that like resonates to the CFOs. They're financial people. They just want to see numbers, right?
That's right.
And one of the things, another of the things that I already said that I really like about CLOC is all the resources, like all the information that you can find there. And I really like it because if you get online into that community website, you can see resources for each of the 12 core principles. It's like the organization is really good. So is there maybe any resource that you can recommend to anybody that you think will be like very useful for somebody just starting into legal ops?
Yeah, I mean, certainly get in the forums, become a member and listen and watch and learn and read, and you can go back into history and see what people were talking about and search for things that you're working on. That is, I think, the number one biggest value. It is really access to your peers. More practically speaking, though, there are certainly a lot of content that CLOC produces, whether it is a webinar or a white paper or, the conferences that it puts on. I will give a plug for some of the ebooks. So there is part on the site. You can sort of find some of the ebooks that, what is legal ops? Why should I hire for it? There's some guides in there that I think are good for starting out. The wheel that you pointed to is a great way to understand what is within the scope of this role. What could this role mean if I'm going to hire for it, or, what I should look for? There's a ton of job descriptions. I mean, there's a job library. So if you're trying to hire someone for this role and you don't know what to write up, how to scope it, who you should be looking for, I mean, just browse kind of what other people are looking for. And I'm sure you can copy from some of that. And then, I mean, you mentioned it, the in-person events can never be substituted. The idea that you can go to Vegas, go to London, go to a regional group meeting, which I think now that COVID's over, people are starting to meet in person again, which is great. And there are regional groups that get together every so often in person. The value of doing that, though, is I think that's where the real unlock is, as you mentioned, just being in the same room and being able to connect with someone and develop those relationships is priceless. And the conference itself, it's multi-part. Certainly the networking is key. There's the Vegas show, and certainly actually the London event is next week that I'm going to be flying to. There's an exhibit hall where you've got, all the biggest vendors in your space. And what I used to tell my team, and my God, it's even worse now with the explosion of vendors, you cannot stay on top. I mean, you could be getting, introductions and demos and pitches all day, every day for like your whole job. But what I used to tell my team was, there's 100 vendors in this room. This would take us like 3 months to get through. Just go. Walk through the thing, talk to each one of them for 5 minutes. What do you do? Is that interesting? No, move on. Next one. Are you interesting? Do I need something like that? No, move on. Oh, this one. Take a short demo and then maybe, sign up for a meeting afterwards. But you can knock out, and know what's happening across the industry so much faster than you would on your own. And gosh, the most important resource that we have is time. So
yeah, exactly. Helpful. This is like speed dating. You just go and just talk to everybody, because I mean, one of the things that you got to do, especially when you go to these exhibit calls, because they're huge, there's so many, it's like, you got to know what are you looking for, right? Because if you want to go, I mean, you can. I mean, if you are like really early and you stay up in the night,
Yeah.
I mean, you can go to a lot of them. But if you're looking for something in specific, it's very useful because I mean, one of the tips that I give to people that are asking me about some of technology is just like ask them questions about how you can use it inside your company. Because if you ask for a standard demo, of course, all of them are going to look beautiful because they're controlled. They want to show you what they want. But if you have the questions and like, can I do this because I work in a real estate company, I look in a financial fund, whatever, it's like it's the best way on how you can learn from them. And then you can compare, right? If you're looking for a specific matter management, if you're looking for CLM, if you're looking for e-signature, whatever, compliance, so or knowledge management, so you know exactly what are those things that you want to solve. Like you gotta understand those pain points. And
I'll just jump in because even this year, and you were there, I think the biggest question that we got as one of the providers as Ironclad was, okay, there's like 10,000 of you, doing the same thing in the space. It all sounds exactly the same. How is anyone different? I can't tell. Like you said, all the demos look beautiful. I think that is a real challenge. And I really sympathize with the folks who are buyers of technology now because there's so much noise. And now with AI, it's like, oh, we can all do everything. I really, I struggle with trying to give advice on what to do other than, like you said, get your hands on it, get a sandbox, get a free trial. But this is where CLOC really makes a difference because you can talk to others who have actually deployed systems and are actual customers. And you can say, who else uses XYZ? And are you happy? Is your company working well? Are people adopting it? My company has this weird way of doing things. How do you guys do it? And you're going to have a much better, insightful conversation with people from the community than you are from, the vendors. And I'm saying that as a vendor.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, right now, I mean, you can even listen to nightmare stories, like, I mean, bad experiences. And that's very useful because, I mean, there are some people that, we pay millions of dollars for this and it never worked.
Yeah.
That can save you a lot of time,
That's
a lot
right.
of precious
That's
money.
Right.
And that's the beauty about these in-person events. Because, I mean, with COVID, the cool thing about doing things virtually is because, I mean, you're in the Bay Area, you're going to be in London, and I'm in Mexico. People all around the world are gathering here, and that's that cool thing. But it's not the same.
Yeah.
Like when you're in person and you can be yourself, it's more casual, right? And I don't know, it's something. There's something different that you can become new friends,
Yeah.
And
you and I have a great dynamic virtually right now because we've met in person and we know each other now. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the things. It was like one of the first events that I attended in person. It was this year because in 2022, I mean, there were still maybe some of them were like trying to be like hybrid, but not so many people. The people were still like a little bit afraid about COVID. Right now, it's not that of a problem. And one other thing that I really like about CLOC, and I want to get also your feedback about it, is that it's a global community, right? Because especially when you talk about the legal space, and legal space is limited by the jurisdiction, right? In the US, you cannot work as a lawyer if you don't pass the bar in that specific state.
Yep.
In Mexico, you cannot work in Spain because you gotta pass a Spanish bar, right? But the thing about legal ops is that it's something that you can apply everywhere, because you're talking about processes. And the cool thing is, like, of course, there are some social and governmental things that can be different from, I don't know, from a company working in China than in the US, than in Mexico. But still, at the core, it's something that it's all related, because as you said, there are numbers. It's like, how can you become more efficient? It's not a trial. It's how can you use different processes to communicate with the different internal departments, and so you can know peers from all around the globe. So there's an opportunity to engage with peers across the globe. And can you tell us, like, how has this global network benefit CLOC members in their daily operations and in their outlook on legal ops, in your experience?
Oh, I think it's immensely helpful to have that variety, the diversity of people who are involved. Of course, when we first started, we were very even West Coast USA, and then it was like all of USA, and then of course now it's very very global. Yay, Mexico! But you have like for myself, I was working at a multinational company, and you were constantly asking, does anyone else have? Sorry, there's a bug in here. Does anyone else have a scope of role where you have attorneys all over the world, and how do you get everyone aligned, and are you centralized, are you decentralized? So I had people to talk to about that. Then you have, whenever I go to speak to the folks in Australia, which I love, they always say, oh, we're so eager to hear what's happening in the US, because the US we see is like 2 years ahead of where we are in the legal ops and transformation space. So they're always eager to kind of see what trends are coming their way, what kind of tools people are adopting, what's the sentiment, and then there are regional things that are specific. So yes, there's a lot that is the same around the world, and you already touched on the benefit of that. But even was it last week or 2 weeks ago, I spoke with the general counsel from Mexico, and we were having a great conversation about how to get legal ops started. And we did hit a little bit of a speed bump when he said, well, in Mexico, I don't know how familiar you're with the legal system, but it's actually a little bit different in that we have these certain requirements, and it's not that easy to do X, Y, and Z. And I said, oh, well, I can't tell you how to do that there. I've never worked, in Mexico, but the fantastic thing is now you've got CLOC in Mexico, and you're going to have all these people who have dealt with the exact same issue. So I just think the global network is a must-have. You have to be able to talk to people who are ahead of you doing something different, have the same experience, the same local experience, but being able to see what's happening globally helps all of us. And look, this is a really hard job. Let's face it, it's a very lonely job, which is why the community is so successful. It's why CLOC has been successful. And you kind of need to point to other companies and trends to be like, I'm not the only person who's wants to do this. I'm not crazy in this organization because I think there's a better way. You're able to point to the entire globe and say, look, I'm part of this organization, and all these people are talking about it. All these companies around the world, or all these companies in my country, you can't say that nobody in Mexico is doing it. Now we've got, 50 companies that have this role stood up that are focusing on transformation. Shouldn't we have that too? And it just allows for more to happen faster.
Right. And some of the things that I like to say is like, I mean, you can talk to vendors, of course, technology. I mean, I also, that I'm also a CLM consultant, and we work with different vendors. And the thing is that you have the technology there, like you can configure it, like to adapt to different processes. But that's also one of the things that why it's important to work with a consultant to have some experience there, because as you say, the general counsel told you, maybe we have different kind of requirements. And every time that I try to help, a US company to get registered in the ERP system of a Mexican company because they want to be a supplier, they're just like, I mean, we don't share that information. It's like, why do you want it? It's like, I mean, it's different cultures, it's different kind of requirements, and you just got to understand it. And the thing is that a lot of the people is like, so is this technology I don't know if applicable will be the correct term, but like, can I use it in Mexico? And the answer is like, you can, but you have to configure it to
Right.
your specific necessities, right? That also happens with Brazil. That also happens to Argentina, Chile,
China.
like China, it's like there's a lot of things, and you gotta understand the culture. And one of the things, like, a lot of the people always say like, yeah, I mean, this type of teams or technology, I mean, is growing in the US, but the US is centuries ahead of us here in Latin America. It's like we cannot do that. And it's like, no, I mean, you can still do that, because I've seen a lot of even in the US, there's a lot of very traditional companies that still struggle with technology and when innovation. So the geography, it's not a limitation. And
Yes.
that's why this global community can help you, because you can take a lot of that information and that experience, and then you can adapt it to your country. We have a term in Mexico. I don't know if it's like Spanglish, but we tropicalize different kind of necessities. It's like you wanna use it in different regions, and I would say that's one of the main things. And also one of the other things, and I mean, you're here, Mary. Like, for me, you're like a superstar. Like, I've been following with you since all the time, and that you telling me, okay, let's do this webinar. This is amazing, right? Because I mean, a lot of people cannot. They just think about like people are like unreachable, and like they cannot talk to them. But when you're part of this community, like, people are so cool. I'm trying also with Jen McCarron to be here. She's the head of legal ops in Netflix. She's amazing, and everybody says, right, just let me know how can be of any help. And this is like the thing that I really want to everybody to understand, like how cool that is.
It's so true. And I encourage anyone who wants to chat. I consider myself like a free mentor, advisor, consultant these days, because I love having conversations with people who are trying to hire for the role, trying to expand their role, trying to scale up their operations, trying to figure out, what to do next, or how do I become more strategic, or I'm kind of stuck. Those are fun conversations. That's, like, let's get together, let's talk about it. And I said in the beginning, I define myself as an advocate for legal operations. I think that is where my heart is. And frankly, I will take every opportunity to get out there and bang on the drum to anyone who will listen about why this is important, why your company should have it, why digital transformation and modernizing your legal department is important. And, you sort of mentioned earlier, there's countries, there's people who are saying, well, that's for the US or that's for everybody else. I look around, nobody else is doing it here. So let's take Mexico as an example. Like, if you have that mindset and that attitude and just say, I'm looking around, or I'm even benchmarking with all my peers in Mexico, and nobody has this role yet, or nobody's using technology yet. Well, you're benchmarking against everyone who's working in the old days. No one else has taken the step to modernize yet. So why not be the first mover? Why not be someone who's going to lead the pack? And just because nobody else is doing things the right way, is that any excuse to continue doing it the old way? So I guess the long-winded way of saying, the community is great, everyone's willing to help, but I know a lot of us just want to get out there and educate and like spread the word, and there's still a lot of work to do.
Exactly. And so, Mary, like, with all your experience about implementing a legal ops team, and I mean, with your previous role, like, can you talk us a little bit about your biggest challenges, right? Because I mean, for Google, I think like it's like one of the most innovative companies in the world. They still have like the startup mindset, but it's huge, and I'm pretty sure it's like moving an elephant if you want to do something new. Like, what were your main challenges in your career?
I think you're right. More people, more problems. As they say. It's hard. The bigger your organization is, or even the older your organization is, the kind of more stuck in their ways, or the people and process is always going to be the hardest part of the equation. Getting people to change the way they're doing it, because as we said earlier, it's not necessarily broken. People have been working the same way in their silos, looking, down and not forward since the beginning of time. And it's worked fine. That does not mean there isn't a better way. And that's kind of the challenge that I think we face. We call it change management. You can call it, whatever you want, but it's getting people to get around the idea of there is a better way and to try something new. We talked about in the beginning, it's getting budget, it's getting buy-in from leadership, it's getting a seat at the table, it's having the authority to try and make the change. As a change maker, which is what the job is, that's just going to be hard. And I think it's especially hard in a legal space. The other piece of it, and I think this is what made Google an incredibly fun, dynamic, innovative place to work, but also made it extremely challenging from a legal ops perspective, is that the culture was one it was continued, even when it was really big, to be very flat, to be very entrepreneurial, to be very empowering of people to work in the way that they want to get work done, because the idea was you hired the smartest people in the world. Let's get out of their way and let them do their thing. But because of that, again, that made it super fun and you worked with great people, but you didn't have mandates. Like there was no way that I was going to say, hey, I see something broken. As of Monday, the GC and I are going to tell everyone that you must do it this new way because it's better for everyone. That just didn't exist in our culture. So our culture was all about, you have to build it, you have to prove it, you have to get people to want to use your new process or your new technology. And without the sort of mandate, it makes the job harder. Not impossible. In some ways, a lot more fun, but in a lot of ways, a lot harder as well.
Right. And one other thing that I was just thinking about, because, I mean, in the past couple of years, I've been going to a lot of events, right? And like,
so many.
Right now, there are so many events, like, and it's like, you can see how small is the world because you meet everybody there, right?
Yeah.
It's the same people. It's like a very small, small compared to other ones, like, I don't know, like the IBA, for example. I mean, that's totally huge. That's like everywhere. This is new because it was CLOC was founded in 2016, right?
Yep.
2016. Like,
yeah, it's not that old.
No, it's not that old. and I was impressed with the summit, like how big it got and how cool it was in the Bellagio, one of the best and prettiest hotels in Vegas. But can you tell us like how it all started and how it continued until now? Like, you just met with the founders and then you just decided. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. No, it was a few of us in Silicon Valley in the very early days who said, oh, I think you do what we do. And we all got together, and we would get together for lunch every so often and kind of just have a roundtable discussion about what was happening and share. And like I said, it was very useful. So it started to grow. And every month or so, we'd bring in new people until it got to the point. So that book club, as we used to call it, started in 2010.
Wow.
And by like 2015, we thought, okay, there's so many people who want to be in the room. There's more people with this role. I think we're ready to make this a formal organization. There's certainly demand. People are asking to be a part of these meetings. And so we created the organization, which launched, I think, January 1st, 2016. And very quickly we thought, well, it would be great to bring everyone together physically from around the world in one place, because we had like the meeting and it was on WebEx at the time, but can we actually physically get everyone together in San Francisco? So within, I want to say 12 to 14 weeks, with no marketing, no website, like just word of mouth, we said we're going to have this conference, and 500 people showed up.
Oh, wow.
And we put it together in like 12 weeks because only a bunch of operations people could do that in their spare time. But it was totally successful. And we thought, okay, we have something here. There is, proof that there is demand for this community and for these types of get-togethers, and it's valuable. So the next year, we already outgrew San Francisco and then moved to the Bellagio in Vegas, where it's been since then. And the next year was 1,000 people. The year after that was 2,000 people. The year after that was 2,500. So it continued to grow, both in the size of the event, but also in the size of the population of people doing legal operations around the globe. And I give CLOC, the organization, credit for being kind of the mouthpiece of banging the drum and spreading the word and creating the wheel to tell people what this role is and why it's impactful. And we have seen it grow, not just in its prevalence, but in the scope of the role has continued to grow, the stature. So, whether it used to be a lot of managers, now it's directors, now it's VPs, now it's senior vice presidents. All of that is super exciting. And I think CLOC has been a big driver of the success. And to be clear, I'm actually not even part of the CLOC organization anymore. When I joined Ironclad, I stepped down from any sort of leadership or involvement in the organization as part of the team, but still obviously a big supporter or fan involved as a member, but no one's paying me to say anything. I just really believe in this organization.
Yeah, you're doing great. I mean, it's a great organization. And now I want to also get your thoughts about, like, that joining CLOC, it is said that you're not just adapting to the future, but also helping shape it. Like, can you share any example that comes to your mind on how any of the CLOC members or on the board have influenced the evolution of the field of legal operations? Because I mean, this is something that there's not a class at law schools. There's not a class in engineer or something. I mean, there are some people like Lucy Basley, like she has been writing a lot about CLMs, but any other example of any other member that have been like a very influential in this area?
Yeah. So you've named a lot of names that are really vocal and who've added great content and education out to the community. But it's not just the names that people all know and love. It's every single member of this community. And if you think about it, this is like the most exciting time to be a part of an industry like this, because when do you get a chance to be disrupting and leading change and transforming and kind of inventing what tomorrow will look like for an entire industry? Like, that doesn't come along very often. So I think everyone who's in these legal operations positions is doing that in their day-to-day job, whether it's a small project or something like truly organizationally transformational. You're doing it for the first time, and then you're being part of CLOC. That means you're sharing it with everybody else, and others who are going to come from behind are going to be learning from you. And what that means is we are literally defining in our day jobs what the future is going to look like for an entire generation of lawyers and all these new roles that are emerging. I mean, we didn't have legal operations 20 years ago, and we only had lawyers and paralegals, but now there's legal project managers and legal data analysts and business intelligence, and there's going to be legal AI specialists and like prompt engineers. Like, this is stuff that is absolutely influencing the evolution and the future of the profession. So, I think it's everyone just doing their part day to day in their jobs is actually defining the future.
Right. And one of the cool things that I like about legal operations, and that's one of the main reasons that I've been, promoting CLOC a lot here in Mexico, is that the association of lawyers, there's not like a bar like in the US. This is more like, public association of lawyers, but they don't accept anyone that is not a lawyer.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is tough to swallow. And like I liked, I talked with John Croft from Elevate. He was like one of our first guests in the Contract Heroes podcast, and he told me that about this term, non-lawyer, that he hates. He hates because it's like you don't gotta be a lawyer to do this type of processes, right? It's like an engineer has way more experience in project management than a lawyer. Right. Yeah. It's like if you would have a complete control on different projects, on different, matter management, it's better to have somebody that has more experience than you, so lawyers can focus on on the activities that they can give an added value, like the negotiation process, right? And you don't need to do a lot of the things that can be done with somebody like, right now with the machine learning, AI. You need more like data scientists, so they can get all the unstructured data, and you can, all your thousands of contracts that are just somewhere in a warehouse, well, they have gold inside. They have data. Like, how can you use that data? And if you ask a lawyer, they're like, I don't know where to start. What do you mean with that?
Yeah. No, that's definitely true. And you don't have to be a lawyer. I think, to be fair, there are amazing lawyers who can kind of see beyond what they learned in law school and can open their eyes and be amazing legal ops professionals, and even better than the non-lawyers, because they have both sides of the coin there. But you certainly don't have to be very accepting. And one thing I was going to mention earlier is when you said, what are the trends? Early days, legal ops was just focused on financial management and working with outside counsel. How do you negotiate with law firms? And I think I came from a law firm, again, not a lawyer, but I came from working at a law firm, so I kind of knew how it worked inside there. But there is value into hiring a lawyer who's practiced in private practice, and they know how the law firms work. They know how the billing structures are. They know the incentives and can talk the talk, right? And have that relationship. So there was a lot of people in the early days hired for that, with that kind of background. As I mentioned, I think today the biggest catalyst or driver for hiring someone into these roles as a first time role is transformation, is technology, is data, is AI. And so you start to see, your mind doesn't immediately go to, what lawyer shall I hire for this? Your mind starts to go to, who has that kind of background, who can help with change management and transformation and stakeholder alignment and, tech road mapping, that kind of thing. And it's a different profile that I'm seeing that's being hired into the role. And then across the globe, the US is always first and the other countries kind of follow suit a couple of years later. I still think international or outside the US, it's more lawyer heavy on the background, even in the legal ops role. But I also see that now starting to shift kind of dramatically. So we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. Like on my side, like I'm a lawyer. I don't practice anymore. Maybe just like some stuff regarding electronic signature. I'm more like into the processes because that's the thing that I love. But I think about myself like a translator between the legal team and the developers, because it's really hard for them to talk to each other, because from a lawyer perspective, when they talk with an engineer, it's like, so I'm thinking about, like, if I click to this button, then I want to pop a window and then it will give you this kind of information. And the developer is like, they're thinking about table structures, rules, and they're like, there's no way.
Yeah.
So I always get in the middle. It's like, okay, developer. So what he wants to do is like, whenever he enters this state of data, then you can create a rule that can give you this type of results. Can we do that? Oh yes, of course we can do.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And then when the tech guys try to explain things to the lawyer, it's like they talk about, very, very technical, and the lawyers are like, I don't know, you tell me, whatever you say. And then when they deliver a product, it's like, this is completely nothing that I was thinking about.
Yeah. It's a great skill, and it's a real skill that is needed in every organization.
Yeah, it's something that you gotta think about. It's like, how can you explain things? Because I mean, you can do magic right now with what we have right now with AI, especially right now with generative AI. I mean, I'm a huge fan right now. It's like, I think I use around 2 to 4 hours every day. ChatGPT. It's like I've my productivity have just like rocket. It's like it's amazing how many things you can do. Of course, I've been seeing, like, when ChatGPT started, in last November, it was like pre-November 22 and post-November 22 with AIs, right? And some of the lawyers were like, so I asked ChatGPT what will happen if I don't know, something very specific to Mexican law, and it's like, yeah, ChatGPT must study more about the civil code. And I'm like, no, you gotta study how to use it. You gotta feed with the data, of course, taking consideration confidentiality, data privacy and whatsoever. But you gotta understand. And right now, I think that AI, it's gonna be like, well, it's been since a while a very about it started like a buzzword. Everybody were just like asking for AI without knowing what can you do with AI. It's like, right. You were doing a demo. It's like, does it have AI? And I'm like, okay, but why do you want it? Or what do you want to do? Right. And I saw one LinkedIn post from Ironclad yesterday. There was a big launch on AI. So please, Mary, tell us, like, how are you foreseeing the future using AI for not just CLM, but for legal ops team? Like, how do you think people are going to use it? I know it's a lot.
Good question. Yeah. Okay. I don't even think any of us know how much this is going to change the world, never mind our legal industry. But I think, make no mistake, that it is going to change. And the way that we work day to day, regardless of what your job is, will change. We can feel it happening in our consumer lives. People are talking about it at the dinner table. And to me, that just means that the the speed of the adoption is just going to be so much faster. I'm a big believer, like you just talked about how much easier and faster you're able to get stuff done now that you have this tool. Well, I'm a big believer that if you get value out of something, you have that aha, this is so great, then you're going to keep using it. Your adoption sets in and you're going to tell friends. And then you can't imagine what your life would be like without that. If I was going to take ChatGPT away from you now, you would say, oh, now I've lost, how many hours of my day, as you just mentioned.
I will go nuts.
So I think that, right. So the adoption's just going to keep pace, and it's going to be a competitive advantage when you're hiring, because imagine you worked in a company that had AI and now you go to a new one and they don't have it. Well, you're not going to want to work the old way anymore. So it's going to be very interesting. At Ironclad, we've released a bunch of things within our CLM. I think the unlock of AI is most powerful when it's applied to a platform and you're able to kind of harness the data all across, not just what's in your contracts, but across the life cycle of the process in getting the contract done. So we have, AI that can look at the repository. It can import contracts and extract metadata automatically. It can help you negotiate and suggest language for changing and replacing clauses or detecting clauses that are not in line with your standard language. And what we announced yesterday or last week was the idea that you can have an AI agent. Now, this is something that's very, very new, because it's able to not just regurgitate back stuff from search or from your metadata, but actually do analysis on either the process or the data within your contracts. And interestingly, it'll show its work. So it's no longer a black box. It actually tells you, almost like an intern, here's how I got to my answer. I looked through these documents. I thought about this. I added these up. I wondered if this meant this, and it will tell you what it's thinking. So we have barely scratched the surface. And even as our own company, we're going to unleash this onto our customers. We don't know what they're going to ask the agents. We don't know what kind of creative things they're going to come up with. And even within our company, when we were coming up with, beta testing and coming up with use cases, each person you sat down with came up with another idea about how to use it. So we have just started. It is going to be a wild ride. I'm super excited to see all the developments from all the providers and vendors out there. But yeah, it's going to be a part of our daily life. I really believe it.
I'm a true believer on the AI. I mean, it's not a buzzword like what happens with blockchain. It's like
exactly.
a couple of years ago, everything was blockchain based, and I'm like, why do you need blockchain? But AI, when you use it,
this is here to stay. Yeah,
and,
for sure.
And this is useful. It's not just like something that looks nice on your name, because people were putting blockchain and then they can raise a lot of money. But now AI, when you start using it and how you can extract that, how you can analyze documents, you can, instead of reading 200 pages, you can just put it on the AI and ask questions, and it will help you. It's like you say, it's like a paralegal with steroids and an Iron Man suit. And, it's like you can do so many things.
And so fast.
And so fast. Exactly. Yeah. So fast. So, Mary, thanks a lot for your time. This was totally delighted to have you here to talk with you again. And hopefully we can see again each other pretty soon. There's a lot of events, so hopefully we can meet on the next one.
Absolutely. And thanks for all that you're doing to spread the word and for helping with CLOC Mexico. It's such good stuff.
Trying to do my best. So everybody, by the way, I'm just going to post the link for the people that want to join CLOC. I'm going to put it here on all the places that I'm streaming. This is something, it's even less expensive than joining the local ones, the local association. So
good. Yeah, it's really cheap. It's good.
It's like 190 something. There you go.
Yeah, you got to keep it accessible.
Exactly. So Mary, thanks a lot. And hope to see you again really soon.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.